Captain Lee Minho floated in the observation deck of the massive survey vessel, Harmony's Light, watching the blue marble called Earth slowly rotate beneath them. The ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with scanning, arrays and research equipment that could analyze an entire planet's history in just a few hours. Another primitive world, he muttered, sipping his morning stimulant from a gravity-neutral cup. In his 40 years of galactic survey work, Minho had catalogued over 3,000 civilizations. Most followed predictable patterns: early aggression, technological advancement, either self-destruction or gradual pacification. Earth seemed to fit the latter category perfectly. Commander Park Jinwoo drifted up beside him, his magnetic boots clicking against the deck plating as he activated the artificial gravity field around their position. "The deep scans are complete, sir. This one's interesting in all the wrong ways." Minho raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Well, they've got global peace, which is rare enough, but their historical records are bizarre. They document something called warfare in incredible detail. Tactics, strategies, weapons development spanning millennia. Yet they haven't had a single military conflict in 3 centuries. The captain pulled up the holographic display, watching as Earth's data streamed past in glowing text. Population, 8 billion. Technology level, basic spaceflight. Fusion power, limited AI development. Military assessment, negligible threat level. Maybe they learned from their mistakes, Minho suggested. Some species do achieve enlightenment through exhaustion rather than wisdom. On the bridge, Communications Officer Kim Nari adjusted her neural interface headset, sorting through thousands of Earth's radio and quantum transmissions. The babble of human languages flowed through her universal translator, creating a constant stream of converted data. "Sir, you need to hear this," she called out, her voice carrying across the bridge's crystalline command center. "Their current broadcasts are unusual." Minho and Jinwoo exchanged glances before floating over to her station. The bridge hummed with activity as 20 different alien species worked together, their various breathing apparatus and environmental suits creating a symphony of mechanical sounds. "What kind of unusual?" Jinwoo asked. Nari's tentacled fingers danced across her console, pulling up audio samples. Poetry about farming techniques, scientific discussions about crop rotation, philosophical debates about the ethics of genetic modification in food production. Oh, and they have something called cooking shows, where they compete to prepare meals. The bridge fell silent except for the ship's life support systems. Chief Science Officer Yoon Tae-hyung, a tall humanoid with silvery skin, looked up from his biological analysis station. "That's remarkably peaceful. Most species at their development level are still arguing about territorial expansion or resource allocation." "Any signs of hidden military technology?" Minho asked, though he already suspected the answer. "None whatsoever," Tae-hyung replied. "Their orbital platforms are strictly civilian. Communication satellites, weather monitoring, basic research stations. Their spacecraft are designed for cargo transport and scientific exploration. We detected no weapon systems, no defensive installations, no military-grade shielding." Minho nodded, making notes on his command tablet. It was almost refreshing to find a species that had genuinely abandoned warfare. The galaxy had seen, too, much violence lately, with the Draconis Empire expanding aggressively through the Outer Rim territories. "Their historical archives are fascinating, though," added Lieutenant Kim Soo-hyun from the Cultural Analysis Station. "They've preserved detailed records of something they call military history, going back thousands of years. Battles, campaigns, weapon development, strategic thinking. It's almost like they're studying warfare as an abstract concept rather than a practical skill." "Probably mythology," Jinwoo suggested. "Primitive species often create elaborate fictional histories to explain their psychological development. The ship's artificial intelligence, a collective consciousness representing 12 different species, chimed in with its harmonic voice. "Analysis complete. Recommendation: classify as Class D pacified civilization. No military threat. Suitable for protective custody under Galactic Confederation oversight." Minho approved the classification with a gesture, and Earth's file was automatically transmitted to Confederation headquarters on Zentara Prime. Another peaceful world catalogued, another potential member of their growing interstellar community. As the Harmony's light prepared to depart, its massive fusion engines creating brilliant blue flares against the star field, none of the crew noticed the subtle energy signatures emanating from Earth's surface. Deep beneath the Korean peninsula, in a facility that didn't appear on any human maps, ancient quantum servers registered the alien ship's departure. The servers had been waiting for 312 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Their programming was simple: monitor for external threats to human civilization, log all potential hostile activity, maintain ready status for immediate activation upon receipt of proper authorization codes. The servers noted the alien vessel's classification of humanity as defenseless and filed this information alongside thousands of similar assessments from other galactic powers. The probability calculations updated automatically, increasing the threat assessment by 0.003%, still within acceptable parameters. The long sleep would continue. For now, deep in the facility's central core, behind blast doors that could withstand planetary bombardment, a single red light pulsed steadily in the darkness. Waiting, watching, ready to wake the sleeping gods of War if humanity ever needed them again. The Draconis war fleet tore through hyperspace like a cosmic hurricane, their massive dreadnoughts leaving ripples in the fabric of reality itself. Admiral Vextar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, Death's Herald, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. 47 worlds had fallen to his fleet in the past 2 months, and their latest conquest was still burning. Behind them, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted color with his emotions. Long-range sensors detect refugee vessels fleeing the Altair system. Approximately 2 million survivors aboard 300 ships. Vextar's mandibles clicked with amusement. The Draconis Empire didn't believe in mercy. They believed in efficiency. Let them run. Fear spreads faster than our ships. When other worlds hear what happened to Altair, some might surrender without a fight. The refugee fleet was a pitiful sight. Civilian transports, mining vessels, even converted pleasure craft packed beyond their safety limits with terrified families. They had escaped Altair just as the planet crackers began their work, turning the once beautiful world into a molten wasteland. 12 light-years away, Earth's deep space monitoring stations picked up the refugee transmissions. The desperate calls for help flooded through every communication channel, carrying stories of entire civilizations wiped out in hours. President Choi Sung-min sat in the emergency council chamber beneath Seoul, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the refugee crisis unfolding across the outer rim. The chamber was carved from solid bedrock, designed to withstand anything the galaxy might throw at them. Around the circular table sat the leaders of Earth's unified government, humans who had known only peace for 300 years. The numbers, so staggering, reported Foreign Minister Lee Ji-hyun, her voice tight with emotion. Entire species are being exterminated. The Draconis Empire calls it galactic cleansing, removing what they consider inferior life forms. Defense Minister Yoon Tae-hyung pulled up tactical displays of Earth's modest space infrastructure. Mr. President, our orbital facilities are already operating at maximum capacity. The refugee ships alone number in the thousands. We don't have the space or resources to help them all. Sung-min studied the streaming data. Families torn apart, children separated from parents, entire cultures reduced to digital records stored on failing computers. His jaw tightened with determination. We'll make room. Every available space station, orbital platform, even the old mining habitats. Move our own people to temporary housing if necessary. Sir, that's logistically impossible, protested Transportation. Chief Park Min-woo. Our ships aren't designed for massive humanitarian operations. Then we'll redesign them, Sung-min replied firmly. Send everything we have. Medical supplies, food processors, temporary shelter modules. No one gets turned away. Within hours, Earth's peaceful merchant fleet transformed into a rescue armada. Cargo ships loaded with medical supplies launched from every spaceport. The orbital shipyards, which had been producing scientific research vessels, began manufacturing refugee habitat modules around the clock. Captain Kim Nari commanded the hospital ship Mercy's Dawn as it approached the refugee Fleet, through the viewports, she could see the desperate conditions aboard the overcrowded vessels. Families huddled in cargo bays, children crying for parents they might never see again. This is Mercy's Dawn. To refugee convoy, she broadcast, "We're here to help. Begin docking procedures immediately." The response came in dozens of alien languages, all expressing the same emotion, overwhelming relief. But the Draconis Empire was always watching. Fleet Commander Korth received the intelligence report while his scout ships refueled at a captured asteroid mining station. The reptilian warrior studied the data with growing irritation. "These humans are interfering with our operations. They're providing aid to the survivors we deliberately allowed to escape." His communications officer, a cybernetically enhanced drone, transmitted the data to High Command. The response came within minutes, carrying the authority of the Draconis. "Emperor himself, Primitive World Terrasol 3 is interfering with cleansing operations. You are authorized to pacify the system. Estimated time for complete subjugation, 1 standard day." Korth's thermal pits glowed with anticipation. Humans were reportedly peaceful, technologically primitive, with no meaningful military capability. It would be a simple matter to demonstrate what happened to species that interfered with Draconis expansion. The advance fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, each one capable of glassing a planet's surface in hours. Their weapons had been tested on 47 worlds. Their tactics had never failed. As they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, Korth expected to find defenseless orbital stations and primitive spacecraft fleeing in panic. Instead, his tactical displays immediately began. "Screaming warnings, Commander," his sensor operator reported, voice trembling. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Defensive platforms that weren't there in any previous scans. They're powering up weapon systems that shouldn't be possible." Korth stared at his displays in disbelief. The energy readings were off the charts, suggesting technology far beyond anything humans were supposed to possess. "Run a full system scan. Find me their military installations." "Sir, I'm reading defensive platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt, camouflaged installations on every major moon, and weapon signatures that don't match any known technology in our databases. Deep beneath the Korean peninsula, quantum computers that had slept for 3 centuries suddenly blazed to life. The activation signal rippled through buried fiber optic networks, reaching facilities on every continent, every orbital platform, every hidden installation throughout human space. The authorization codes were finally being transmitted. The sleeping gods of war were about to wake up. The plasma bolt struck Lunar Colony 7's main habitat dome at exactly 0300 standard time. The explosion lit up the lunar surface like a miniature sun, vaporizing 3,000 sleeping colonists in an instant. The shockwave rippled across the moon's surface, shattering mining equipment and research stations that had operated peacefully for decades. But the attack did something the Draconis Empire never expected. It triggered the most sophisticated defense network in galactic history. At 0301, every quantum communication relay in human space received the same transmission simultaneously. The message was simple, ancient and terrifying. Covenant broken, mandate activated. Colonel Zhang Wuyong was grading student papers on the Battle of Thermopylae when the emergency klaxons began screaming throughout Seoul Military Academy. He'd been teaching ancient Earth history for 15 years, helping cadets understand the theoretical concepts of warfare that humanity had abandoned centuries ago. The Academy's basement suddenly rumbled as massive blast doors began opening for the first time in 300 years. Wuyong felt his blood run cold as his command authorization codes activated automatically, flooding his mind with knowledge he'd never learned but somehow understood perfectly. "All faculty and senior cadets report to Sub-Level 7 immediately," announced the Academy's AI system, using authorization protocols that weren't supposed to exist. Wuyong descended into the depths of the Academy, following corridors that his security clearance had always claimed were maintenance areas. The walls hummed with power conduits that were definitely not for classroom lighting. At the end of the corridor, a massive blast door stood open, revealing a command center that belonged in humanity's mythical past. "Sir," called Technician Han Subin, her usual calm demeanor shattered as she stared at cascading data streams. The archives are unlocking, all of them, project files dating back to the Unification Wars, the main display screens filled with classified information that made Wu Yung's head spin. Project Starfall Protocol, orbital bombardment platforms, hidden throughout the solar system, Quantum Fleet Initiative, shipyards disguised as asteroid mining operations, Genesis Forge, manufacturing facilities that could build warships in hours instead of years. Lieutenant Shin Jiho, who yesterday had been struggling with basic tactical theory, now moved between control stations with deadly efficiency. Colonel, I'm detecting massive power signatures from the Ceres Mining Collective. Sir, those aren't mining lasers. They're particle beam weapons capable of cutting through battleship armor. Wu Yung's hands moved across his command console as if guided by ancestral memory. His fingers found controls he'd never seen before, accessing systems that had waited 3 centuries for this moment. Signal all hidden installations. Begin Phase 1 mobilization. Authorization code, Sleeping Dragon's Wake. Throughout human space, the galaxy's greatest deception began unraveling. On Europa Station, what appeared to be an ice research facility suddenly revealed itself as a massive weapons platform. Camouflage fields flickered and died, exposing rail. Guns that could punch holes through moons. Station Commander Park Ji-hyun, who had spent her career studying alien biology, found herself remembering tactical maneuvers she'd never learned. In the asteroid belt, hundreds of mining operations shed their disguises simultaneously. Automated factories that had been quietly extracting ore for centuries revealed their true purpose. They were shipyards, capable of producing warships faster than any known technology in the galaxy. The Titan Agricultural Collective, known throughout human space for producing the finest synthetic foods, opened massive hangar doors that hadn't been accessed in 300 years. Inside, sleek fighters and bombers sat in perfect preservation, their quantum engines humming to life for the first time since the Great Peace. But the most shocking transformation was happening to the humans themselves. Captain Kim Do-yeon had been running a refugee assistance program just hours ago, coordinating food distribution and medical care with the gentle efficiency of a career humanitarian. Now he stood in the command center of Orbital Platform 7, his eyes cold and calculating as he studied tactical displays. Draconis fleet positioning suggests a standard intimidation formation, he announced to his staff, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to come from his DNA rather than his training. They're expecting us to panic and surrender. Instead, we'll demonstrate why humans don't fight wars, we end them. The refugees aboard the orbital stations watched in growing horror as their peaceful rescuers transformed before their eyes. The key. Kind doctors who had treated their injuries now moved with military precision. The gentle engineers who had built their temporary shelters were suddenly discussing weapons trajectories and kill ratios. Zara Keth, a survivor from the Altair system, pressed herself against the observation deck window as she watched human cargo ships docking with the station. But these weren't carrying supplies anymore. The ships disgorged soldiers in armor that seemed to absorb light, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "What are they?" she whispered to her companion, a crystalline being from the Vega colonies. "I don't know," came the terrified reply, "but I'm beginning to understand why the Galactic Confederation classified them as harmless. They weren't trying to protect us from humans. They were trying to protect us from what humans become when threatened." Deep in space, the Draconis Advanced Fleet detected the sudden surge of activity throughout the solar system. Their sensors screamed warnings as defensive platforms revealed themselves, as hidden shipyards began launching vessels, as the peaceful Earth system transformed into the most heavily fortified position in known space. Fleet Commander Korth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed no military capability whatsoever." His sensor operator, voice shaking with fear, reported, "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures that exceed our own fleet capacity by a factor of 10. These aren't primitive weapons. This technology is beyond anything in our databases." On Earth, President Choi Sung-min stood in the same bunker where he'd ordered humanitarian aid just days ago. But now the peaceful leader was gone, replaced by something harder, colder, infinitely more dangerous. "Signal the Draconis fleet," he commanded. "Tell them they have one chance to withdraw from human space. If they refuse, remind them that we didn't abandon warfare because we were weak. We abandoned it because we were too good at it." The sleeping gods of war had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Draconis Empire had conquered 47 worlds using the same brutal tactics. Overwhelming force, terror bombardments, and the complete annihilation of any resistance. In 18 hours, they learned why those tactics had never been tested against humanity. Admiral Korth watched his tactical display with growing panic as human shipyards worked at impossible speeds. "This defies every law of physics we know," he snarled at his trembling aide. "How are they building entire battleships in hours?" His sensor operator, a cybernetically enhanced warrior who had never shown fear in 20 years of conquest, was openly shaking. "Sir, the lunar facilities are operating at 400% of theoretical maximum efficiency. They're converting raw asteroids directly into warships using some kind of molecular assembly technology. And the ship design, they're using weapon systems that don't exist in any galactic database." What Korth couldn't understand was that humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of war in secret. While the galaxy saw peaceful farmers, human engineers had been developing technologies that would make warfare so efficient, so devastatingly precise, that conflicts would end before they could truly begin. Commander Kim Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship Remembrance, a vessel that had been assembled from asteroid mining equipment in just 14 hours. The ship looked nothing like conventional galactic warships. It was sleek, organic in design, covered with adaptive armor that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. "Fleet status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone born to command fleets, though yesterday he had been managing a civilian transport company. "All vessels report ready, sir," replied his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Sun-woo. 67 ships constructed and deployed. The Titan yards are launching another squadron every 20 minutes. Dae-hyun studied the enemy formation through his quantum targeting system. The Draconis fleet had arranged itself in their standard intimidation pattern. Massive dreadnoughts spread across space like predators preparing to pounce. They had used this formation to terrify countless civilizations into surrender. "Analysis complete, Commander," reported his AI warfare specialist. "Enemy formation suggests they expect us to either flee or cluster defensively. Their positioning leaves them vulnerable to coordinated precision strikes." Dae-hyun smiled grimly. "Then let's show them why humans don't fight wars. We solve problems. All ships, execute surgical storm protocol, target their command vessel first." The human attack began unlike anything in galactic military history. Then, instead of the massive energy exchanges that characterized space warfare, human ships moved like dancers, their movements perfectly coordinated across impossible distances. They didn't rely on overwhelming firepower. They used precision. The first human salvo struck the Draconis command ship with surgical accuracy. Instead of trying to blast through its heavy armor, the human weapons found the exact weak points where shield generators connected to power conduits. The mighty dreadnought lost its defenses in seconds, leaving it helpless. "Impossible," Korth breathed as his flagship's systems failed around him. "How did they know our shield configuration?" The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans had studied every military engagement in galactic history for 3 centuries. They knew the design flaws of every ship, the tactical weaknesses of every formation, the psychological profiles of every warrior species. The human fleet moved through the Draconis formation like a scalpel through tissue. Each shot was calculated for maximum strategic effect while using minimum resources. Ships weren't destroyed, they were disabled with precision strikes that left their crews alive but helpless. Lieutenant Yoon Seo-jin, manning the weapons control, on the Remembrance, watched her targeting computer identify enemy weak points with inhuman accuracy. "Sir, enemy fleet effectiveness reduced by 78% with minimal ammunition expenditure. Remaining vessels are attempting to retreat." "Let them go," Dae-hyun ordered. "Make sure they're functional enough to report what they've seen. Fear is more efficient than destruction." Within 12 minutes, the Draconis advance fleet, that had terrorized the Outer Rim territories was reduced to drifting hulks. The survivors found themselves rescued by the same humans who had defeated them, treated with medical care that surpassed anything in their own empire. Back on Earth, President Choi Seung-min stood in the war room that had been hidden beneath Seoul for 3 centuries. The walls were covered with tactical displays, showing human forces deploying throughout the galaxy at speeds that defied conventional understanding of space travel. "How long were we hiding this capability?" he asked quietly, watching as human fleets appeared in star systems light years apart simultaneously. General Lee Soo-young, who had been awakened from her role as a university philosophy professor just 2 days ago, looked exhausted by the weight of ancient responsibilities. "We weren't hiding it, Mr. President. We were protecting the galaxy from it. 300 years ago, our ancestors realized that human warfare had evolved beyond what the universe could survive. The tactical displays showed the true scope of human preparation. Hidden shipyards in every system, camouflaged weapons platforms throughout space, manufacturing facilities that could produce fleets faster than enemies could destroy them. But most terrifying of all were the humans themselves, civilians who transformed into military geniuses the moment the ancient protocols activated. The Draconis Empire has 13 major fleet concentrations," reported Admiral Zhang Wujin, reviewing intelligence that had been gathered by human agents posing as peaceful traders for centuries. "Our advanced scouts are already in position. We can end this war in 72 hours. Seung-min watched the displays with mixed emotions. "And after we win, what happens to us? Do we go back to farming and poetry, or do we become the thing we've been hiding from?" General Lee's expression was grim. "That's the question our ancestors faced. They chose exile and secrecy, rather than become the galaxy's tyrants. Now we have to make the same choice. Across human space, fleets that shouldn't exist launched toward enemy territory using technologies that violated known physics. The galaxy was about to learn why the ancient civilizations had feared humanity enough to quarantine them on a single world. The sleeping gods of war had awakened, and they remembered everything. The final battle began at dawn on 6 different worlds at once. Fleet Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of his massive command ship, Inevitable Dawn, watching holographic displays show the impossible happening in real time. Human fleets were attacking everywhere at once, moving through space like they owned it. "How are we doing this?" whispered Captain Moon Jae-soo, staring at the tactical screens. Ships that should have taken months to travel between star systems were arriving within hours. Supply lines that should have stretched across impossible distances somehow worked perfectly. "We prepared for this day," Park replied, his voice steady. "For 1,000 years we prepared. On the Draconis homeworld, their greatest fortress cities crumbled under weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The Draconis had ruled half the a galaxy for 10,000 years. Their warriors were legends. Their technology had conquered countless species. But against humanity's unleashed power, they fell like children. Captain Zhao Wei piloted his fighter through the burning atmosphere of Draconis Prime. His squadron moved like a school of metal fish, impossible maneuvers that would have killed any normal pilot. But these weren't normal pilots. They were the children of a species that had learned to sleep with nightmares. "Target their command center," he radioed to his wing. The building below stretched for miles, a crystalline monument to Draconis power. It had stood for 5,000 years. It took them 30 seconds to turn it into glowing sand. Meanwhile, in the outer system, Commander Li Xiaoping's battleship Iron Thunder engaged 3 Draconis dreadnoughts simultaneously. The enemy ships were each twice her size, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. She destroyed all 3 without taking a single hit. "How?" the dying Draconis admiral transmitted. "How are you this strong?" Li didn't answer. The truth would have broken his mind. On the 4th day, something strange happened. Draconis resistance simply stopped, not because they were all dead, but because they finally understood what they were fighting. Across their empire, survivors huddled in shelters, sending the same message over and over. "They're not like us. They're not like anyone." Major Nam Hyejin received the surrender offers on Earth. She sat in a bunker, that looked like a simple government building, but extended 20 miles underground. Around her, screens showed human forces across the galaxy, all connected by technologies that shouldn't exist. Should we accept asteroid? Not yet, Yejin replied. Let them understand first. The understanding came on the 6th day, when the Draconis Emperor himself made his final broadcast. His voice shook as he spoke to the entire galaxy. We found them. The Old One's children. They weren't extinct, they were hiding. The apex predators have awakened. May the void preserve you all. That's when it ended. Not with explosions or grand battles, but with silence. Human fleets simply stopped fighting and began withdrawing. The war machines powered down. The impossible weapons went quiet. President Sung-min's broadcast reached every civilized world in the galaxy. He stood in what looked like a simple office, but his words carried the weight of sleeping giants. The threat has been neutralized. We return to peace, but understand this clearly. We choose peace not from weakness, but from responsibility. Do not mistake our kindness for inability. As human ships disappeared back into their quiet corner of space, the galaxy began to process what had happened. The humans had moved like they owned the laws of physics. Their weapons had rewritten reality. Their strategies had been so advanced that seasoned military commanders couldn't even understand them. But most terrifying of all was how quickly they stopped. The moment victory was assured, the war machine simply turned off, like a sleeping giant rolling over and going back to sleep. Captain. Moon Jisoo watched the displays go dark one by one as human forces returned home. Sir, I have to ask, how long have we been able to do this? Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. Since before we met our first alien neighbor, we just chose not to. Back on Earth, the ancient facilities began their shutdown sequence. Weapons that could unmake stars powered down. Ship factories that built vessels faster than light folded back into ordinary buildings. The orbital platforms that looked like simple space stations revealed their true nature for just a moment before resuming their disguises. The galaxy watched human space return to its peaceful, quiet existence. Trade ships resumed their slow, normal routes. Communication returned to standard frequencies. Everything looked exactly as it had before. But now everyone knew the truth. Humanity hadn't evolved past war because they were weak. They had evolved past war because they were too dangerous to trust themselves with it. They had become gods of destruction, then chosen to sleep rather than rule. The war gods rested again, and the galaxy was safer for their slumber. In the end, the most terrifying thing about humanity wasn't their power, it was their restraint.